There are a lot of application problems that involve proportions. I'm going to go through one or two examples here, and then I'm going to direct you to look at the videos that are linked below. Because there are so many different types of problems that involve proportions, the best way to get comfortable with them is to go through several examples and see how these proportions are involved with the problems. So let's take a look at our first problem. If it takes 20 gallons of gas to drive 360 miles, how many gallons of gas would it take to drive 900 miles? We're only asked to find one unknown, specifically how much gas is necessary for the longer trip, and so we're going to let that be X. Let the gas needed for the longer trip be X. Good. Okay. We are going to set up a table, just like the other problems, to help us organize our information. These proportion problems are always going to be 2 by 2 tables, and you'll see why this works in just a moment. So let's look at the columns. We're going to label the columns with the different types of information we have in this problem. One type of information is how much gas there is, and that's measured in gallons. And then the other is distance, and that's measured in miles. All right. Also, we have kind of two different scenarios in this situation. We're told something about a shorter trip. It takes 20 gallons of gas to go 360 miles. And then we're also told information about a longer trip. And that's how I'm going to label the two rows. The short trip and the long trip. Now let's fill in the information in our table. How much gas was needed for the shorter trip? Well, if we go back to the problem, it says they needed 20 gallons of gas to go 360 miles. So that's going to be 20. Now, how much gas is needed for the longer trip? That's the unknown. We said that was X, because we didn't know how much gas was needed for the longer trip. So we're going to put X here. Now let's talk about the distance. What was the distance in miles for the shorter trip? Well, that shorter trip was 360 miles, so we're going to put 360 there. Then what's the distance in miles for the longer trip? Well, it says the longer trip was 900 miles, so we're going to put 900 here. And we have filled out the information in our table. Now, the neat thing about these proportion problems is that the information in the table is going to be exactly what goes into our proportions. Let me show you here. Sorry, I've gotten really excited about using colors. So what we can do is we can take all of the information from our table and we can put it directly into the proportion. Basically, the information from the table goes exactly into the proportion as we would usually set up a proportion. The reason that this problem uses proportions is because the amount of gas that we need for a trip is proportional to the distance that we're going. If you're traveling twice as far, you need about twice as much gas. If you're going to travel 8 times as far, you're going to need about 8 times as much gas. If you're going to travel half as far, you're going to need half the gas. I know that's not exact because the amount of gas that we use depends on whether we're going uphill or downhill, and if it's raining or not, that might change things. We might need to go more slowly, and that might use a little bit more gas because we're not using the engine ideally. But overall, if we're ignoring the little differences for these things, the amount of gas we need is proportional to how far we're going. So that's why we're able to set everything up into a proportion. And then once we've done that, we can solve the proportion. If we take this and cross multiply, that gives us 20 times 900, which is going to be 18,000, equals x times 360, which is going to be 360x. Then to get x alone, we need to divide both sides by 360. And when we do that, we end up with 50 equals x. So we go back up to our let statement, x is 50. And since that was the amount of gas, that's measured in gallons. And we can answer the question, how many gallons of gas would it take? It would take 50 gallons of gas. That is our answer. All right. All of these other proportion problems that you'll see in the other videos are going to be set up in a similar way. We're going to have a scenario, and we're going to make a let statement for the one unknown quantity. We're going to take the information and set it up into a table, and we're going to be given 3 pieces of information. The fourth is going to be unknown, so that's going to be our x. We're going to take the information from the table and put it directly into a proportion, and then we're going to use cross multiplication to solve that proportion and solve the problem in general. Take a moment in each of these problems. I want you to go through all of them linked below, because they all represent different situations that involve proportional reasoning and thus will be solved using proportions.